And so here's the agenda for today. I can get long-winded at times during this webinar, but I'm gonna try not to do that today. I'm gonna try and keep it to 30, 35 minutes, and then you can follow up with me at any point in time that you like if you have questions. Here's what I want you to know about me. I've worked for a drug maker, Eli Lilly, probably one of the top 10 drug makers, top 10, top 15 in the world. I actually, towards the end of my career with Eli Lilly, I landed in a role where I led a team and an access team where we were charged with negotiating with PBMs to get our branded products onto the PBMs formulary. My specialty was diabetes care. Caught the entrepreneurial bug, started a mail order pharmacy, sold that in 2010. After learning a ton about negotiating and working with manufacturers, putting product on the shelf, and wholesalers, and the network contracts coming from PBMs. They're egregious, folks. So being frustrated by that experience, I said, hey, if you can't beat them, join them. Let's go out and let's start a PBM, but let's do it right, where we're going to treat pharmacies fair, we're going to treat plan sponsors fair, and we're going to put patients first. And so the reason I share that with you is I've got nothing to withhold from you today. I'm pulling back the curtain. If you have any questions, there's two ways to get those questions to me. You can send them via chat on your control panel there, or if you want the floor, everyone's muted. If you want the floor, I will unmute you, and the floor is yours for any questions, concerns, pushback, any agreements that you want to share with everyone else in attendance. And so here's what I'm hoping to accomplish by the time we finish this presentation. I want you to know how PBMs make money. I want you to feel something other than indifference about what you learned today. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to be talking about some things you've never heard anyone else talk about unless you follow me. And I'm not bragging here. What I'm simply saying is that PBMs have profited from not sharing information with their clients. So I'm not saying a whole lot. That is the business model. We want to turn it on its ear today. And then the last thing, I want you to do something with the information that I'm going to share with you, right? What I want you to do is to eliminate information asymmetry. Information asymmetry, it's also referred to, folks, as information failure. It's an economic phrase. And what it means is that when one party has access to information that another party doesn't have access to, when these two parties are negotiating some sort of business arrangement, the party with the information, and as important, if not more so, the skill level to interpret that information, or a higher skill level to interpret that information, is going to use it to its advantage. That's the big problem. It's not, well, I guess information asymmetry, I guess it's synonymous with transparency, but maybe not. But it's not too low rebates. It's not discounts aren't high enough. It is about information, folks. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. What you're looking at is an example of information success. It is an actual quarterly rebate report that all of our clients receive. Now, the problem where the information asymmetry or information failure comes in, and I should say that some of the information here, like plan ID, RX number, NABP, that information is populated when we send this report out. It's just been redacted here for privacy reasons, right? But that information is populated as well. But what most plan sponsors receive is not a detailed rebate remittance report. They'll receive maybe a 2 or 3 page report. It'll have some nice graphics in there, but the payment is one line item. It is a bucket of dollars. It does not provide claim level detail for rebate payments. As you can see here in this report, it is by date, it is by RX number, it is by NDC, it is by channel, and it is what any eligible claim for a rebate. That claim receives a certain dollar amount, and it is shared with the plan sponsor. Why would a PBM not want their clients to have this level of information? I told you up front, they profit from information failure. Here's the status quo. Plan sponsors typically, or far too often, enter into an agreement with a pharmacy benefit manager that calls for an artificially too low admin fee. Because the admin fee is artificially too low, as soon as that contract is executed, and non-fiduciary PBMs have people that they hire in these roles called pricing analysts, as soon as that contract is countersigned, it gives that PBM essentially a blank check, a green light to augment that artificially too low admin fee in the back end. 25 cents per claim, $1 per claim, $1.50 per claim. No PBM can survive off of that. No PBM can make payroll off of that. The primary way PBMs, if the contract, folks, is opaque, and listen, let me preface my comments. When I say things like the primary way or the way that PBMs generate the bulk of their profit, in the PBM industry, usually that's always an understood usually, or generally speaking. Generally speaking, non-fiduciary PBMs, the bulk of their profits come from the manufacturer. Now, note the source here, PBMI. Here is a second source for the information that you can see here. And what you will find, and see, this is real neat. So this takes me back to my mail order days and working with the manufacturer, because I've seen this. Just like specialty drugs right now, right? Everyone's up in arms about specialty drugs, and rightfully so. But just like in the early 2000s, when there was pause around the efficacy of generic drugs, right? There was pause around efficacy around generic drugs, the small molecule generic drugs. And now 90% of the drugs in this country dispensed are generic. The same is going to happen with specialty. It's just going to take time. We've seen this movie before. And you can see here, back in the early 2000s, it was small molecule brand drugs generating the bulk of PBM profits. When plan sponsors got sophisticated, they started cutting that cash, that revenue source off. And then what PBMs did, remember, they moved it to mail order. Remember, mandatory mail order? Plan sponsors said, right? And so what PBMs did, plan sponsors and their independent consultants cut that revenue stream off. And what did PBMs do? They've shifted it now to specialty drugs. That's called ballooning. Ballooning is when a plan sponsor cuts off a profit source, a revenue source for a PBM. That PBM then will shift that cost that overpayment that it was receiving from their plan sponsor, it will shift it to another source. Now, if I were to move this out to 2020 right now, you've got MBDCs, medical benefit drug claims. There's a reason that PBMs are asking clients to forego rebates on the retail side for lower administrative fees, for lower medical administrative fees. Also, before I move on, I want to stress, when I say artificially too low admin fees, as I pointed out here, I'm not just talking about the admin fees on the pharmacy side. I'm also referring to the admin fees on the medical side as well. Because essentially now, PBMs, if you're not working on the medical side, then we're falling short in our responsibility now. You really have to have an integrated model where you're working on the medical and the pharmacy now. So be careful when you hear forego your rebates here, and we'll take those and use them as credits to apply to your medical benefit. Oh, whew. The new path says this: PBMs make money one way. That is from the administrative fee. The trade-off now is that administrative fee is not artificially too low. Instead, it's reasonable. And the benefit to the plan sponsor is all the hidden cash flows go away. When the hidden cash flows go away, competition will drive prices down. Competition will drive prices down because those hidden cash flows aren't being accounted for. You know, you've got a, CVS of the world, or an Optum of the world, they come in and they just crush everyone on rebates. I mean, they just crush the discount guarantees. They look beautiful. But that's only a piece of the story. It doesn't tell the whole story. And so, again, a fiduciary model PBM charges a realistic and fair administration fee for their service, and then generally there's no other cash flows, and it's a better value. And from my position, and I'm hoping to convince others as well, there's really, PBMs, we talk about traditional models, pass-through models, transparent models. Who are we kidding? They're all the same. They're all the same. I'm going to show you why here in a second. So the bottom line is that really there's only two types of PBMs in terms of business models. Either your fiduciary, which obligates you to put the client first in all of your actions. That's what a fiduciary does. Contractually obligates themselves to put the client first in all of their actions. If the contract doesn't mandate that, then you're non-fiduciary. That's it. It's important to understand the business model. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. And I'm going to point out something really, really interesting here. But follow me. I'm going to start first with the contractual relationship, then I'm going to move into the financial flow. Before I do that, the very first thing I want to point out is this. PBMs, we never take control of the product unless we own a mail order pharmacy or specialty pharmacy. I believe that's a conflict of interest, right? But we never take control of the product. We contract with pharmacies in order to have sites from which to dispense prescriptions to our plan participants. And we obviously have to have prospects or clients or potential clients to provide these services to. Those clients are third-party payers who consist of health plans, employer groups, small, medium, and large, unions, coalitions, municipalities, state, federal government. It's a fairly exhaustive list of potential clients for us. Now, moving into the financial flow, we reimburse pharmacies for the prescriptions that they dispense, and then we send that bill to the third-party payer or the health plan. It is that bill to you that begins the games. I talked about how the bulk of PBM profits, not revenue, but profits, come from the manufacturer. And you can see here the formulary rebates. That's problem number one. There's three big ones on this particular slide. Problem number one, the intent of rebates is to get to lowest net cost. That's the intent of rebates, is to reduce the prescription drug cost. The problem is that the rebates that the PBM receives from the manufacturer, in many cases, they're not passing that manufacturer revenue, all of it, 100% to the plan sponsor. Even if the plan sponsor agrees to allow the PBM to keep 5% and the plan sponsor keeps 95%, in actuality, the PBM is keeping, in many cases, far more than 5%. We're going to talk about that here in a second. The second big problem is the outflow of cash from the third-party payer back to the PBM is too high. Now, it happens less with health plans because they're more sophisticated. It happens less with the very, very large plan sponsors, but it still happens. That too, I like to, because I'm a Scorpio, I need proof when people tell me things. I'm skeptical by nature. I need proof. And as such, I also like to provide proof when I make bold statements. I'm going to give you proof. Stay with me. So the second problem is, here's problem number one. Here's problem number two. And I'm going to talk about that outflow, the reimbursement to the PBM. I'm going to talk about what drives that here in a second. But let me touch on the third problem. Look who sits at the very top of this entire diagram, this entire system. You do. Your clients do. Yet you know the very least about how it works. That is a recipe for disaster. That is a recipe for overpayments. And I'm not talking about small overpayments. I'm talking about massive overpayments. Overpayments that could make the difference between whether or not at the end of the year you're on your P&L statement, whether you're in the red or whether you're in the black. Dabbling in the procurement, management, and ongoing evaluation of PBM performance is not enough. Here's what leads to that overpayment in terms of that reimbursement going back from the plan sponsor to the PBM. It's called a spread. A spread is not a billing error, folks. A spread is not, you've got a certain discount, but you were charged, maybe a little higher. That's just a billing error. Spreads are intentional. A spread is the difference between what you were billed and what the pharmacy was reimbursed. Think about that reimbursement and distribution system that I just walked through with you. And here's one thing I'm really trying to get better at, is when I read things, not to gloss over them because the light bulb doesn't immediately go off. I'm trying to actively interpret what I'm reading. What does it mean to me? That reimbursement and distribution system that I just shared with you, there's a lot of meaning into that when I talked about the contractual relationship and the financial flow. Generic drugs have two prices, the AWP and the MAC. The AWP is artificially inflated, yet that is the basis for how a plan sponsor's cost is going to be determined. MAC prices, remember, MAC prices are flat, not flat, but there are no discounts that you can see for MAC prices, right? So generic drugs go on the MAC list, and sometimes multi-source brands might go on the MAC list. They shouldn't be there, but some PBMs put them there. But generic drugs are on the MAC list. But really, PBMs, the way we determine the prices and what drugs are going to be on that MAC list. But it's really backed in as a discount off of AWP. And so from a plan sponsor's perspective, right, you've got an AWP discount, and then you've got MAC prices, and you've got a MAC list. I want to show you a real world example of how spreads manifest. So you've got two primary price benchmarks. You've got AWP minus, and you've got MAC, maximum allowable cost. It is just whatever that price is on that list, and you should have access to it. Whatever that price is what you'll be billed. So here's what I want to do. The two benchmarks, we got AWP here. Now this document is, I post this every Thursday, or I try my very best to post this information on my blog, blog.transparentrx.com, every Thursday, where we take what pharmacies paid and we share for the product, and we share that with whoever wants to see it, the world. Right? And so when pharmacies buy, when they go in and they've got a master agreement with a wholesaler, when they go in to buy a product and have it delivered by the wholesaler or the manufacturer, when they go in, they see invoice costs, they see acquisition costs, they see WAC, they see AWP, they see it all. Right, so let's take a look at olanzapine, generic, right? Spreads are going to happen more time. It happens on brands, but it's just really rampant on generics, right? Because brand manufacturers make most of the profit on brand drugs, patents, right? But generic drugs, there is a huge gap, or there can be a huge gap. Because there's not just one manufacturer, there are many manufacturers for some drugs, right? So let's look at olanzapine, 2.5 milligram quantity of 30. The AWP is $419. let's call it 420. Let's say you as a plan sponsor, you work for a manufacturing company. I mean, goodness gracious, everyone's being challenged right now. Uh, and let's say, money's tight and you've negotiated an 85% discount off of AWP for generic drugs. So that is your generic effective rate, 85%. That would mean you're taking 85% off. Let's call it 420, 350. Let's call it 360. If I'm way off, someone let me know. Let's call it 360 is your discount off of AWP. That leaves a cost to you or your client of $60. Here's where it gets interesting. AWP, here's what the pharmacy paid to put the product on the shelf. $3.60, my friends. There's no pharmacy. There I go again. These absolute words. Very few pharmacies like PBMs. They all say we don't reimburse enough. That means we're negotiating hard. And I'm pulling this from my experience, folks. What drove me to move higher up the value chain, what drove me to get in to run a PBM was the poor reimbursements, take it or leave it, coming from primarily, at that time, really the big three. Now we got a big five PBMs. Even if the PBM, and this is a stretch, trust me, even if the PBM gave the pharmacy 100% markup, just for kicks and giggles, let's call it $8. Shoot, let's call it $10. Almost a 200-300% markup. Let's call it $10. That still leaves a difference of $50. That's how spreads happen. The only way, and you can't, if a PBM says we don't make money from spreads. Let me just call it how I see it. The contract will tell you what's happening. Don't take words, don't take words, because a lot of times people saying that, they're not at the table making those decisions. The only way to know whether or not you're paying spreads is to know what the pharmacy is being reimbursed for that same exact prescription. Remember the reimbursement and distribution system that I just shared with you. That's the only way to know. The MAC price, let's say that the MAC price, let's say that the MAC price was $55. That still leaves a spread of $5. All right, I'm going to skip the poll question. Just to be clear, I'm a fan of mail order, especially now. I'm a fan of mail order. I could be a homer on this, right? But you have to be careful. Mail order could cost more than retail. It depends on the contract. Remember, I talked about ballooning. The PBM is actively seeking ways to generate its desired profit on your deal. And if they can do it through mail order, they will. This is the actual case study case. Here, mail cost 38 through the PBM's mail order pharmacy. Had that patient walked in on the same day, exact drug, NDC level, dose, quantity, everything the same, to Joe's Corner Pharmacy, they pay $8. There's a difference here of $30. This is why I get asked a question, how can GoodRx be lower than my insured group's cost? This is how. The spreads, the massive overpayments. This is how that happens. You can change out, the community. You could add GoodRx here. And so here's the background information on that particular study, and misleading contract language. Real quick, 2 examples: MAC lists and rebates. There are multiple MAC lists, folks. There shouldn't be, but many PBMs, non-fiduciary PBMs, employ multiple MAC lists. One for the employers. They'll even have different MAC lists among their plan sponsor clients. And then the pharmacies will have a different MAC list. That generates spreads. It's called differential pricing or differential contracting. Rebates by many names. In that reimbursement and distribution system slide, how PBMs generate revenue, profit, almost 50% came from the manufacturer. We talked about the financial flow, how money moves. Formulary rebates was at the top of that line. The problem is that's only one type of rebate that a manufacturer pays to a PBM. Here are other names and types of rebates paid back to the PBM. Manufacturers provide revenue to PBMs for one thing, well, 2 things really, but primarily to help them boost sales of their products. They also pay for data, but I believe PBMs should be able to keep that revenue. But everything else in data is just it's a small piece of the pie, like less than 5%. The other 95% is based on sales of product or market share of products dispensed based upon the PBM's formulary. Here is an example. See, I told you I like to provide proof. Express Scripts, a couple years back, sued Kaleo. Kaleo is a specialty drug manufacturer. This product, and for this example, it's just one product called Evzio. Express Scripts believe it's so bold that it would sue, and that didn't care that the information was going to be made public. That's how little faith they have in their clients to keep them honest. They sued Kaleo for rebates it believed it was owed that Kaleo did not want to pay. I have no doubt that Kaleo owed the money. None at all. But what I want you to note here is the types of manufacturer revenue that it was seeking. You see here, formulary rebate. You can see what those payments were or should have been for just one drug from one manufacturer. But take a look at the administrative fees. Now, don't confuse this administrative fee with the administrative fee a PBM charges you for things like claims adjudication, right? Don't for access to a pharmacy network, access to the member portal, access to the mobile app. Don't confuse that admin fee with this admin fee. That admin fee is between the PBM and its client. This admin fee is between the PBM and the manufacturer. This admin fee dwarfs the formulary rebate. And depending on the language in your contract, you may be thinking you're getting 100% of the rebate, but what you're really getting is 100% of the formulary rebate. An administrative fee is just a renaming of those dollars. That's where opacity, lack of transparency comes in. It gets worse. Price protection rebates. And now, mind you, plan sponsors are getting smarter about these. The PBMs are already 4 or 5 years ahead and have already shifted that cost to the medical side. It is the wild, wild west right now for any PBM who wants to generate massive overpayments from prescription drugs on the medical side. Take a look at the price protection rebates here, folks. These are the essentially the same rebates that we saw up here, essentially, right? Look at the price protection rebates here. Price protection rebates say this: when manufacturer A increases the price of their product by a certain percent in a short amount of time, then the rebate back to the manufacturer increases accordingly. But if the PBM isn't held to account in the contract language, see, I keep going back to the contract. In the contract language, it will keep that. And that's how we get to 50% of its profits. Outcomes rebates. PBMs have been engaging in this for 10 years now. For 10 years, PBMs have been negotiating performance-based, clinical-based rebates for branded prescription drugs. It's not being addressed from a plan sponsor perspective. Again, bring these to the table to get costs down. I talked about spreads and how health plans are less likely to be victimized by it. Larger groups are less likely to be victimized by it because you would assume that they have more resources to allocate to the ongoing evaluation of PBM performance. The state of Ohio, unlimited resources, was bitten. And like James Brown, they got a little payback. This was in 2000, and I'm missing a zero here. I need to add that. But this was in 2018. The state of Ohio, let me tell you what they had never done before. And this is, I'm getting to the most important piece of this entire webinar. I'm getting to the most important metric in evaluating PBM proposals. The state of Ohio, up until 2018, had never been interested in what they were paying the PBM to provide the service they were hired to perform. This is not anecdotal that I'm telling you. It's not, just trust me. They had never looked at that number. What are we paying you? Because an overpayment, what it is a service fee. The information, and so when they started to look at this, and when I said the state of Ohio got a little payback, when they started to look at this, they terminated the contracts. And so what I'm asking you to do, remember there's 3 things I wanted you to do, right? What I'm asking you to do is to start to look at what the PBM is being paid. CVS, and also, when you look at what they're being paid, you're asking, do I believe that that number is fair? Right? And that's what the state of Ohio was asking. They uncovered what they were paying. At that time, they were just trying to decide, whether it's too high or too low. They ultimately decided it was too high. CVS, the CEO, in an earnings call, this information it's out on the internet. It's out on the internet. The CEO of CVS, during an earnings call, see what they do? They tell clients one thing, but then they go back to their shareholders and say something different. They go back to the analysts and they say something different. The CEO in 2018 said this. Now get this. We underwrite contracts to overall level of profitability and many levers available to pull, depending on the preferences of the clients. Here's what that means in layman's terms. Remember when I said maybe 5-10 minutes ago, when I read things nowadays, I try not to gloss over it because I'm discovering that things have way more meaning than I would interpret at first glance. Interpret them to have at first glance. At first glance, this may not mean a whole lot. You may say, well, that makes sense. But let me tell you what this means in layman's terms. It means we're going to make as much money as we can. And as that amount of money that we're going to make is ultimately going to depend upon how sophisticated or unsophisticated our clients might be. That's what that means. Sophisticated clients, there are less levers available to pull. Sophisticated clients understand that the contract is the most important piece of any request for proposal. So why do you wait until the PBM is selected to start negotiating the terms of the contract? I heard something interesting the other day. They were talking about, if you're not a sports fan, then just tune me out, I guess, but maybe not. They were talking about Jerry Jones and Dak Prescott and the lingering contract issues, and someone said that Jerry Jones he's the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott is the starting quarterback. His contract is up. He wants to get paid. And this person said that Jerry Jones' philosophy is that deadlines get deals done. Whew, I love that. Deadlines get deals done. What's happening is PBMs know you've got to get ID cards in the hands of your members. You've told them they've won the RFP, and now you expect to get transparency in the contract. Doesn't happen that way. You've got to put the contract first. And ultimately, the bottom line I'm trying to get to here is this. Just like the state of Ohio, what is the PBM putting in its freaking bank account? Think about this for a second. When we negotiate with pharmacies, when we negotiate with manufacturers, we have contracts with them. We have contracts with them. We don't go back and renegotiate those terms until those contracts come up for renewal, just like yours. We don't go back to the manufacturer of the pharmacy networks and say, hey, ABC supply is, they're up for renewal and they're hammering us. Can you give us, it doesn't know. So what you're really negotiating for, now watch this. What you're really negotiating for is what you are going to allow the PBM to keep. We've already negotiated manufacturer revenue, in other words, rebates. We've already negotiated discounts at the pharmacy. That isn't going to change because your deal has come up for renewal. What you are negotiating for is what you are going to allow the PBM to keep. Discounts off of AWP, rebate guarantees, while important, don't let them distract you from what you're really trying to get to, because the lower this number, the lower your cost. I'm telling you, we just won a deal where the client was paying $57 PMPM. We got them down to 19. That difference between 57 and 19 PMPM is the PBM's service fee. That PBM happened to be one of the big five. So they get better rebates than we do. They get better discounts at the pharmacy than we do. So they were literally, from a pharmacy benefit, making $45 to $50 PMPM. This is that formula. This is the number one metric in evaluating PBM proposals. It's not PMPM. It's not PEPY. It's not discounts off of AWP. It's not the minimum rebate guarantee. It is this. Of course, if you don't believe that what you're really negotiating for is what you're going to allow the PBM to keep because our deals are done, then maybe you don't believe this is the number one metric. Go for it. Everything in green ends up in the PBM's bank account. An example of a cash disbursement would be a reimbursement to a retail pharmacy. Remember the almost $250 million in spreads the state of Ohio paid. Another example of a cash disbursement by a PBM. So everything in green goes into PBM's bank account. Everything in red, cash disbursement, comes out. Another example of a cash disbursement, you saw the reimbursement and distribution system diagram, would be rebates. The share that it pays out. Whatever is left over are their earnings. And what I'm suggesting to you is this is really the only number that is not arguable. It's admin fee is an admin fee. PM or per claim. I guess a PBM could play games with the definition of what a claim is. You shouldn't be paying for rejected claims. You shouldn't be paying for reverse claims. Only paid claims, right? That's it. But everything else, this dispensing fees, you know, I guess there is a small gap there, but not so big, you know, it's going to cause big overpayment. But everything else are hidden cash flows. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, folks. I mean, benefit design is critical. I haven't even touched on that and how that could drive to overpayments. Haven't even touched on that today. The point is that whatever's left over, the earnings after cash disbursements, it's hidden here. The PBM's take home, right? That amount above the admin fee, it is a part of your final plan cost. That's what the state of Ohio learned. Doesn't it make sense? You hire someone, I don't need to know how much profit you make, but I need to know what's going to hit my credit card, what the ACH deduction is going to be for your service, not for, that's different. We know, you know what that number is. You know this number here. What you don't know is this number. That number is driving costs, folks. That's the number one metric driving costs. And again, I'm just going to sit back, let you take some notes real quick. This is one of those slides where you can gloss over, say, I've seen this before, you know, yada, yada, yada. But the focus on actual net costs is different today, or it should be, than it was to you yesterday. Information symmetry versus information asymmetry. And so here's the bottom line here. Everyone talks about metrics and PBM business models and how that's important to holding PBMs to account. Even more important than that, I defined information asymmetry to you, right? It's information failure, either in having access to it or being able to interpret it. Ultimately, what you do with what you've learned here today, rest with this: education. Eli Broad, he pronounces it broad instead of broad. He pronounces it broad. I mean, what does he know? He's the only person in the history of the world to be a founder of 2 Fortune 500 companies. Real quick, I'm uncomfortable doing this, but it would be a disservice to those who want to continue the education if I didn't. We've got the only credential that is backed by a major university and that focuses purely on pharmacy benefits. Prescription drugs are the future, y'all. For the first time ever, it holds the large share of the healthcare dollar. If you want to learn more, You want to put yourself in a better position for promotions, job security, whatever it is, help your clients out more because you know you need to learn it. This is really the only opportunity for that, because no one's going to talk about and share with you what you need to know more so than me. As a fiduciary PBM owner, I benefit from you pulling your head out of the sand. That's going to be my time today, folks. I hope you got something from it. I'm going to stick around just for a few minutes, just in case any questions come through. I hope you enjoyed it. Be safe.